Hello, my name is Chloe, and today I'm going to tell you about my wedding day. Most people remember their wedding as a blur of white lace, flowers, and champagne. I remember mine by the stunned silence of 200 guests, the shattered look on my new husband's face, and the precise moment my mother-in-law's perfectly crafted world turned to dust. All because of a toast. But this story doesn't start with a raised glass. It starts a year earlier, with a lie. The lie every family tells about itself, a polished, perfect myth. For a year, I was groomed to become a character in the Sterling family myth. But on my wedding day, holding a microphone in a room full of their closest friends, I decided their story needed a new, more truthful ending.
Before we dive into that, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. And please, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Knowing these stories travel makes it all worthwhile.
I met my husband, Mark, in Chicago. He was kind, intelligent, a successful architect who could talk for hours about structural integrity and still make it sound romantic. He was different from anyone I'd ever dated. He had a quiet confidence, a sense of stability that I, a freelance graphic designer who grew up moving from state to state, found incredibly attractive. After a year, I was deeply in love. When he proposed on a snowy evening at Lincoln Park Zoo, under the twinkling Christmas lights, my yes was the easiest word I'd ever spoken. Then came the next step, meeting the Sterlings. Mark always spoke of his family with a mixture of love and reverence. They lived in a wealthy suburb just outside the city. His father, Richard, was a respected surgeon, and his mother was Brenda. The first time I went to their house for dinner, I felt like I was stepping onto a movie set. The house was immaculate, a sprawling colonial with manicured lawns and a palpable silence of expensive good taste. Brenda Sterling greeted me at the door. She was a woman in her late 50s, impeccably dressed, with a helmet of perfectly combed blonde hair and a smile that was dazzlingly bright, but didn't quite reach her cold, assessing eyes. She appraised me from head to toe in a single swift glance. "So, you're the artist," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "Mark has told us so much about your creative pursuits." The entire evening was a masterclass in passive aggression. Every compliment she paid me was double-edged. "What a unique dress! So bohemian. It must be so liberating to have a career with so much flexibility." She spoke of Mark not as her son, but as her crowning achievement, his prestigious university, his successful career, the charity boards he sat on her insistence. Richard, his father, was kind but quiet, orbiting his wife like a silent moon. It was clear who was the sun in the Sterling family solar system. Mark, to his credit, seemed oblivious. He saw his mother's probing questions as genuine interest, her suggestions as helpful advice. He had been conditioned his entire life to see her as a perfect, benevolent matriarch. I left that evening with a pit in my stomach, but I told myself I was being overly sensitive. I loved Mark, and Brenda was the price of admission. When we announced our engagement, her reaction was telling. She hugged us both, her smile firmly in place. "A wedding! How wonderful!" she declared. "We have so much to do. We must get it right. A Sterling wedding is an event, after all." Notice the "we." From that moment on, my wedding was no longer my own. The wedding planning began, and so did Brenda's war of attrition. It wasn't a full frontal assault. It was a campaign of 1,000 tiny cuts. First, the dress. I had found a beautiful, simple A-line gown with delicate lace sleeves. I felt like myself in it. I made the mistake of showing Brenda a photo. She stared at it for a long moment. "It's lovely, dear," she said, "if you're going for a more rustic, understated look." I had always pictured Mark's bride in something a bit more significant. A ball gown, perhaps. Something with presence. The word rustic was delivered with the same tone one might use for mud-stained. A week later, I went to my final fitting. The dress was hanging, ready for me. As I approached it, Brenda, who had insisted on coming along, moved past me holding a glass of red wine. She tripped on a loose thread on the carpet, or so she claimed. The wine arced through the air in a perfect, horrific spray, splashing across the pristine white lace of the bodice. The seamstress gasped. Brenda brought her hand to her mouth in mocked horror. "Oh my goodness! I am so clumsy," she cried. "Chloe, I am so sorry." I looked at her, and in her eyes I saw not an apology, but a flash of triumphant satisfaction. The dress was ruined. We had to order a new one, and Brenda just happened to have the catalog for a designer she preferred, one who specialized in ball gowns with presence. Mark's response? "It was an accident, honey. Mom feels terrible about it. Let's not make a big deal out of it." Then came the guest list. Mark and I wanted a wedding of around 150 people, our closest friends and family. Brenda had other ideas. She presented us with a spreadsheet containing an additional 75 names. "These are my colleagues from the charity board, Richard's partners from the hospital, the Hendersons from the country club. Chloe, these are people we simply cannot offend. They've watched Mark grow up." When I tried to protest, explaining our budget and the venue's capacity, she gave me a pitying look. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about the budget," she said, patting my hand. "Richard and I will handle it. It's our gift." A gift that was a Trojan horse, turning our intimate wedding into her personal society event. Mark's response? "She's just proud, Chloe. She wants to show us off. It's coming from a good place." The sabotage continued. She called our chosen caterer to suggest they replace our menu choice of modern American cuisine with the stuffy, traditional surf and turf she preferred. She tried to replace our wedding band with the string quartet she knew. Each time, I had to call the vendors and undo her meddling, feeling like a frantic child cleaning up the mess of a chaotic parent. With each incident, I felt more and more isolated. Mark, my loving, supportive Mark, was a brick wall when it came to his mother. He was afflicted with a blindness I couldn't penetrate. "That's just how Mom is," became his constant refrain. I was the difficult one. I was the one who didn't understand. I was starting to feel like I was going crazy. The discovery of the secret happened by chance. It was 2 months before the wedding. Brenda had asked me to help her clear out some old boxes from the attic of their sprawling home. "So many old memories in here. It's time to declutter before you and Mark start your own family," she had said with a wink. The attic was dusty and filled with forgotten treasures. Old furniture, Mark's childhood toys, and stacks of sealed banker's boxes. Brenda pointed to a stack in the corner. "Most of that is just old tax documents Richard refuses to throw away. But there's a box of my old college things in there I'd like to find." As I was moving a heavy box labeled tax records 1988 to 1992, the brittle cardboard gave way. The contents spilled onto the floor, a cascade of old files, receipts, and a smaller wooden box that had been hidden underneath. It was a small cedar chest, unlocked. My curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Inside, nestled amongst dried flowers and old photographs, was a thick bundle of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. The handwriting on the envelopes was Brenda's. They were all addressed to a woman named Catherine, her sister, who lived in California. I know I shouldn't. It was an invasion of privacy, but a force stronger than my own conscience compelled me. My hands trembled as I untied the ribbon and unfolded the first letter. It was dated a year after she and Richard were married. The first few lines were mundane chatter. Then I read a paragraph that made my blood run cold. It read, "Catherine, I don't know what to do. Richard is a good man, a kind man, but there is no passion. He is devoted to his work. I am so terribly lonely. And then there's Daniel. You remember Daniel from the lake house next door. He's home from medical school. He looks at me in a way that makes me feel alive again. We've been meeting in secret." I frantically unfolded another letter, dated several months later. "I think I'm pregnant. And Catherine, I did the math. The timing, it can't be Richard's. It has to be Daniel's. Richard is overjoyed. He talks about the baby constantly. He has no idea. What have I done? I'm going to have this baby and I will raise it as a sterling. No one can ever know. Daniel has agreed to disappear. It will be our secret. The secret I must carry to my grave to protect this family." I sat there on the dusty floor of the attic, the world spinning around me. Mark, her perfect son, the heir to the Sterling legacy, was not a Sterling by blood. His biological father was a secret lover from decades ago. Brenda's obsession with Mark, her iron-fisted control over his life, his image, it all suddenly made a terrifying kind of sense. He wasn't just her son. He was the living embodiment of her darkest secret. My first instinct was to run downstairs and confront her. My second was to tell Mark. But how could I? How could I drop this bomb on the man I loved just weeks before our wedding? It would shatter him, shatter his relationship with the man he called his father. It would be an act of unimaginable cruelty. So I did nothing. I carefully put the letters back in the box, tucked them back under the tax files, and pretended I had found nothing.
The wedding day arrived. It was a beautiful day in June, sunny and warm. The ceremony itself was lovely. Standing at the altar, looking at Mark, I almost convinced myself to let it go, to bury the secret and try to build a life with him, despite his mother. I loved him. Wasn't that enough? Then came the reception, and Brenda, seeing her son married and officially starting a life with another woman, decided she needed to make one final public move to assert her dominance. As the champagne was being poured for the toasts, she took the microphone from the band leader before the best man could even stand up. "If I could have everyone's attention," she said, her voice ringing with false sweetness, "I'd just like to say a few words." She began by talking about Mark, her beautiful, brilliant son. Then she turned her attention to me. "And, Chloe, we are so happy to welcome you to our family. You come from such a different background, so simple and artistic. It takes a lot of courage to step into a family with such a long history, such deep roots in this community. We are all hoping you will adjust well. We know it will be a challenge." The humiliation was exquisite. She had just called me a simple, poor outsider in front of 200 people. The guests shifted uncomfortably. I saw Mark's father, Richard, look down at his plate. Mark just smiled, still blind, thinking his mother was giving a heartfelt speech. She finished by raising her glass. "To my son, Mark, may he always remember where he comes from." She looked directly at me as she said it. It was a final, devastating power play, a warning. The applause was polite, but strained. The best man gave his toast, then my maid of honor, and then it was my turn. The microphone felt heavy in my hand. I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked at Mark. I looked at his kind, clueless father, Richard, and then I looked at Brenda, who was watching me with an expression of smug victory. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "I want to thank our parents for making this day possible, and I especially want to thank my new mother-in-law, Brenda, for her very touching words." I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. Brenda, you spoke about the importance of family, of history, and of knowing where you come from. And you're right. Those things are incredibly important. A family story, its legacy, should be built on a foundation of truth, not on carefully guarded secrets. Brenda's smile flickered. She shifted in her seat. You've spent this entire year showing me what it means to be a Sterling. You've guarded Mark's image so fiercely, so protectively. And as I was helping you in the attic a few months ago, I think I finally understood why. The room was dead silent. I could feel Mark's confused stare on the side of my face. I found a box of your old letters, Brenda. Letters to your sister, Catherine. I heard a sharp intake of breath from Richard's side of the table. He looked at his wife with dawning horror. It's a story about a secret pregnancy and about a decision to protect your family by hiding the truth for over 30 years. So, Brenda, since you believe so strongly in knowing where you come from, I think it's time everyone, especially your beloved son, knew the real story of his heritage. I would like to propose a toast, not just to my husband, Mark Sterling, but also to his biological father, Daniel Rosser, wherever he may be. I raised my glass. Not a single person moved. The silence was absolute, broken only by a choked sob from Brenda. Mark was staring at me, his face a mask of disbelief and confusion. Richard was looking at his wife of 40 years as if he'd never seen her before. I had not just exposed a secret, I had detonated a bomb in the heart of the Sterling family myth, and the fallout was just beginning. We didn't stay for the cake. In amidst the chaos that erupted, Mark and I slipped out a side door and left our own wedding reception. The car ride was silent, thick with unspoken questions and a grief too new to be articulated. The weeks that followed were the hardest of our lives. There were tears, accusations, and long, painful conversations that lasted late into the night. Mark felt betrayed by everyone, including me. "How could you do that, Chloe, in public, in front of everyone?" he asked, his voice raw. "Because she left me no other choice," I answered, my own voice breaking. And I finally told him everything. Every cutting remark, every act of sabotage, the ruined dress, the guest list, the constant, soul-crushing campaign to make me feel small and unworthy. I told her how she had made me feel isolated in my own relationship. Slowly, painfully, he began to understand. His anger at me shifted toward his mother, and a lifetime of conditioned blindness began to clear. He and his father, Richard, had their own confrontation with Brenda. The family, as he knew it, was shattered. There was no easy, happily ever after for us. We started marriage counseling the next month. Mark had to process the truth about his identity, and I had to heal from the psychological warfare Brenda had waged on me. We had to learn how to build a partnership that was just ours, a fortress against outside influence. It's been 3 years now. We are still together, and we are stronger than ever. But our strength isn't built on a perfect, polished myth. It's built on a foundation of hard truths, difficult conversations, and the decision to choose each other, even when it was messy. We are estranged from Brenda. Richard, after a period of separation, chose to stay with her, a decision Mark struggles with but has learned to accept. We are building our own traditions, our own family, on our own terms. A family built on honesty. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, but then I remember that feeling of being small, of being erased, of my voice not mattering, and I know I did. I didn't just save myself, I saved my husband from a life lived under the shadow of a lie. My toast on that wedding day wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of liberation. It was the moment I stopped trying to fit into their story and started writing my own. And that, I've learned, is a story worth telling. Thank you for listening. If you've ever had to fight for your own truth in a difficult situation, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe for more stories from Heartland Confessions. Until next time. Thank you for listening. If you've ever had to fight for your own truth in a difficult situation, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe for more stories from Heartland Confessions. Until next time.